Señora Montoya, you killed my father.
The Princess Bride wasn't just a fairy tale adventure, it was a battleground of creative collisions. Behind that shimmering fantasy world lurked production disasters and casting chaos. A lead actor nearly quit over salary disputes. A dangerous stunt nearly killed someone on set. The studio demanded rewrites at midnight. Secret injuries were hidden from fans. Here are 20 weird facts about The Princess Bride you've never heard. Fact 1. From the first day of shooting, the atmosphere erupts into tension. The original director had conflicts with producers over tone. Not whimsical comedy, but something more gritty was his vision. The producers insisted on broad humor. On day 2, a tense meeting erupts when a lead actor challenges a costly costume change order. The costume designer storms off the lot. Crew whispers about power struggles. What audiences did not know is that many dailies were discarded because the director refused to show footage he considered too silly. The public sees a seamless fairy tale, but behind that lies a fractured set and fragile alliances. Fact 2. Casting didn't come easy. The actor cast as Westley nearly walked off after learning he would wear a mask in part of the film. He complained mask work would hamper his performance. The director countered, insisting the mask was essential. The actor threatened to drop out. The producers intervened, offering extra pay and a clause to remove mask scenes if test screenings failed. He stayed. Meanwhile, the actor cast as Inigo suited up in near-freezing water for hours to shoot his duel with swords. Conditions were brutal. The swashbuckling facade hides behind it long hours, rugged cold, and physical burnout for those actors. Fact 3. One of the most brutal stunts nearly kills a stunt performer. The fire swamp sequence features bursts of flame and collapsing terrain. During a take, a hidden rig misfires and a segment of the swamp floor falls prematurely. The stuntman plunges through but miraculously stops just before a hidden pit. The crew halts immediately. The injured performer is rushed off and returns days later but shaken. The production hides this incident from press to avoid scandal. Fans see only romantic peril, but backstage risk was real. This near disaster leaves a mark on morale. Actors whisper about safety problems no one speaks publicly about. Fact 4. There is fierce tension between the two leads behind camera. The actor playing Buttercup and the actor playing Westley clash over chemistry and direction. One wants more dramatic emotional beats. The other wants a lighter romantic tone. Arguments erupt on set. During one night shoot in the fire swamp, the actor playing Buttercup refuses to deliver a line unless the lighting gets changed. The director scrambles through call sheets to reschedule. Crew overhears heated voices in trailers. What audiences did not see was that scenes of tenderness were reshot multiple times because of behind-the-scenes friction. It was not a fairy tale romance behind the camera, but a negotiation battlefield weighted by ego and creative vision. Fact 5. Studio interference strikes in the editing room. The original cut runs long and includes darker subplots. The studio demands a lighter middle act. The editor receives calls at midnight telling him to cut entire sequences. One subplot about a conspiracy in the royal court vanishes entirely. The director protests the loss of nuance. The studio insists on pacing, not depth. Final cut shapes toward crowd-pleasing moments. What audiences see now is punchy fun. What audiences didn't know is that hours of emotionally heavy dailies sit in a vault. The dramatic tension you feel on screen is partly contrived by cuts forced by execs. The legacy hides the sacrifices made to appease test audiences. Fact 6. The famous sword duel between Westley and Inigo became a production legend for all the wrong reasons. What looked like effortless choreography took months of agony. Both actors trained every day with world champion fencers, but the perfection came at a brutal cost. One actor tore a tendon while rehearsing a reverse parry and continued shooting through pain. The crew often saw him limping between takes, pretending nothing happened. The director refused to use stunt doubles, insisting authenticity mattered more than comfort. It wasn't swashbuckling magic, It was sweat pain and hidden injuries. Every gleaming blade you see on screen carries the real blood of exhaustion. Para 7. The rodents of unusual size were not CGI or puppets. They were real people in suits, and the conditions were horrifying. Inside the costume, the performer nearly fainted from heat during one fire swamp scene. The headpiece trapped air, and the man inside gasped for oxygen between takes. The suit smelled of burnt latex and mud. At one point, the performer collapsed. The crew had to rip the costume open to pull him out. Production paused for an hour. What audiences saw as hilarious fantasy was in truth a claustrophobic ordeal endured by an unsung performer who almost suffocated for a few minutes of screen time. Fact 8. Andre the Giant's body was breaking down during filming. Years of wrestling had left him with severe back pain. He couldn't lift Buttercup as scripted. In the famous rescue scene, he uses hidden wires and hydraulic support disguised in his costume. Crew members literally held him upright during dialogue. His size was iconic, but his pain was unbearable. He once told the director he couldn't feel his legs after long takes. What audiences saw as superhuman strength was delicate illusion. The miracle of The Princess Bride isn't that Andre looked strong, but that he managed to complete the film at all. Fact 9. Cary Elwes paid the price for realism. During the torture scene in the Pit of Despair, the machine prop malfunctioned. The operator cranked it higher than planned. Cary passed out mid-scene. The director thought he was acting and kept rolling until he realized it was real. Medics rushed in and Elwes awoke later, confused and bruised. That take never made it to the film, but the footage still circulates privately among crew as a reminder of how far actors were pushed. It wasn't performance art, it was physical suffering for authenticity. Fact 10. The grand wedding finale nearly collapsed under its own chaos. The church where they filmed had broken heating, and everyone shivered through hours of takes. Robin Wright's gown kept snagging on props. The priest's fake beard kept falling off. At one point, lightning struck nearby cutting power for 20 minutes. Cast huddled under blankets and candlelight, waiting for backup generators. What looks like a dreamy climax was shot in bitter cold with numb hands. The laughter you hear in the final blooper reel wasn't joy, it was survival. Go ahead and like and subscribe, because behind every fairy tale ending lies another chapter of pure madness. Fact 11. The film's budget became a running nightmare. Production started with a modest number but ballooned as location costs skyrocketed. Sets in the English countryside were flooded twice, forcing expensive repairs. Props were destroyed and replaced. One producer mortgaged his own house to keep cameras rolling. The studio refused more funding and threatened shutdown unless scenes were cut. The director rewrote entire sequences overnight to fit shrinking resources. Every lush forest you see on screen hides the truth of a crew fighting daily to finish before payroll bounced. The Magic Kingdom audiences adore was built on financial chaos and sheer stubbornness. Fact 12. Even the weather conspired against them. During the Cliffs of Insanity shoot, the wind howled at 40 miles per hour. The actors dangled from ropes hundreds of feet above the Irish coastline. Crew members anchored them to cranes for safety. Despite the precautions, one gust nearly knocked an actor off balance. The director shouted for cut, but the sound vanished in the wind. That footage ended up being used because the panic in their faces looked authentic. What viewers call thrilling adventure was raw fear caught by accident. Fact 13. Billy Crystal's Miracle Man sequence became a nightmare for the makeup team. His prosthetic took hours to apply, and he improvised so wildly that takes ran long. The latex began melting under studio lights. Each time they reset the camera, the team rebuilt sections of his face with glue. The actor inside the makeup was suffocating from the fumes but refused to break character. When the director yelled cut, Crystal simply collapsed, laughing through exhaustion. The humor in those scenes hides hours of discomfort and heat. What looks effortless was in truth endurance disguised as comedy. Fact 14. The film's score nearly didn't exist. The composer's original version leaned dark and orchestral, but the studio wanted light and playful. He was ordered to scrap weeks of work. Furious, he destroyed some master tapes. A new version was assembled from leftover cues and temp tracks. The director later said the tension between melancholy and humor gave the film its unique tone. Not harmony, but conflict birthed that unforgettable sound. Every swell of music carries within it a silent creative war between art and commerce. Fact 15. Editing the duel between Inigo and Count Rugen turned into emotional hell. The original take ran over 5 minutes with multiple death feints. The studio demanded it be shorter. The editor cut it to pieces, crying in frustration. He called it the hardest scene of his life. The tension between revenge and mercy was lost in trims, but time was money. When the final print arrived, the editor refused to attend the premiere, believing the scene no longer carried its heart. What you see today is brilliance carved out of heartbreak. Fact 16. The film's iconic "As You Wish" almost never made it into the final script. The line was originally longer and less poetic. It read as, "Whatever you command, my lady," which didn't have the same rhythm. During a late rewrite session, the director's assistant suggested shortening it. The change was scribbled on a call sheet margin at 2 in the morning. On set, Cary Elwes delivered it softly, almost as a whisper, improvising the tone. The director immediately sensed its magic and ordered every take to emphasize that delivery. What audiences didn't know is that those 3 words became the emotional cornerstone of the entire story, born not from planning, but from sleep-deprived inspiration. Sometimes lightning strikes in the margins, not the script. Fact 17. Robin Wright was barely 20 when filming began and constantly fought to prove herself among seasoned veterans. Crew members nicknamed her the porcelain doll because she looked fragile, but in truth, she endured more physical strain than anyone. Her dress weighed 30 pounds and absorbed water during the swamp scenes until it felt like a lead blanket. She also did her own horseback riding despite fear of the animal bolting. One afternoon, the horse did rear unexpectedly, throwing her onto a mat and bruising her ribs. She kept shooting anyway, hiding her pain under that serene expression. The director later said, "No one embodied grace under pressure like Robin. The princess wasn't rescued. She survived." Fact 18. Many fans quote the unforgettable line, "My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die." But few know that Mandy Patinkin carried real grief behind those words. His father had died from cancer just before filming. Patinkin admitted later that each repetition of the line felt like he was confronting that loss head-on. The duel scene became his personal catharsis. During the final take, he broke down sobbing after shouting the last line. The set fell silent. The emotion was so raw, the director refused another take, saying nothing could top it. What audiences felt wasn't just acting, it was grief transformed into legend. The sword fight wasn't vengeance, it was farewell. Fact 19. The film's release was almost its death sentence. The studio didn't know how to market it. Was it a comedy, a fantasy, or a romance? They printed dull posters and scheduled it opposite major blockbusters. The film barely survived its first week. Even critics were confused at first. But word of mouth spread. College campuses began midnight screenings. Fans quoted dialogue in dorm hallways. Slowly, The Princess Bride rose from near oblivion to cult immortality. Its failure at the box office became the spark of its legacy. Not success, but survival turned it into a generational touchstone that defined sincerity amid cynicism. At 20, the reunion years later proved how deep those bonds ran. When Cary Elwes wrote a memoir about filming, he revealed that nearly every cast member had stayed in touch for decades. They held private dinners every few years where they toasted Andre the Giant. At one gathering, an actor brought Andre's old chair from set as a tribute. They shared memories until sunrise, laughing through tears. Few films create families like that. Behind the humor and fantasy was a shared trauma that bound them for life. The Princess Bride wasn't just a movie, it was a collective memory frozen in time by people who suffered and triumphed together. One reel of the original negative vanished mysteriously after post-production. Decades later, it was found mislabeled in a warehouse in Burbank. Inside that reel was an alternate ending, Buttercup and Westley sailing away as Fezzik recites a lost poem. The footage had never been seen by audiences, and the audio track was incomplete. Restorers later confirmed it was genuine. The director said he left it out because perfection already existed in the film's quiet final line. The missing reel became myth, then miracle. It proves The Princess Bride still hides secrets, waiting to be rediscovered by those who believe in its magic. The Princess Bride was never just a fairy tale. It was a miracle stitched together through pain, laughter, and chaos. What began as a modest fantasy turned into a timeless legend forged by human grit. Every smile, every duel, every line was earned the hard way.